All right, guys, our next panel, the female fan base. Unlocking the future of motorsports audiences. Why engaging women fans is good for the future of racing. This one is presented by GameBridge. Leela Srinivasan is the CEO of Parity. Leela has been with Parity, a sports marketing and sponsorship platform focused on professional women athletes for over 2.5 years. Prior to joining Parity, Leela was the CMO at SurveyMonkey, CMO of Checkout.com, and a recruiting software firm, Lever, and held marketing leadership roles at LinkedIn and OpenTable. She serves on the board of Upwork and nonprofit Empowered by Light, and is on the board of advisors for the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth, where she earned her MBA. She was recently named to Adweek's inaugural list of the 25 sports marketing MVPs and has other awards. Welcome, Leela. Jessica Forrest is the Group Vice President, Rights Holders for Nielsen Sports. Jessica has worked at Nielsen for over 10 years and in her current position for the past 8 years, working with all of their motorsports clients, including leagues, teams, and tracks. She started her career in NASCAR over 20 years ago and has worked in motorsports in some capacity ever since. After 7 years at NASCAR, she moved over to the agency side where she managed Sunoco's motorsports marketing platforms. She received her bachelor's degree at Virginia Tech and has 2 masters, one in psychology from Wake Forest and one in marketing from the Virginia Tech College of Business. Welcome, Jessica. And back with us again this year, please welcome Kate Beavan, the advisor to the board, More Than Equal. Kate is the advisor to the board of More Than Equal, a not-for-profit organization seeking to find and develop the first female Formula One world champion. It's quite a statement. It's quite a statement, Kate. She started out as a commercial lawyer practicing in Oxford, in the United Kingdom before moving into motorsport. Kate was recruited by Bernie Ecclestone at Formula One Management in 2003 and worked on numerous commercial and legal projects, including the creation of F1 in Schools program. In 2017, she was appointed director of the Global Hospitality and Experiences Division at Liberty Media after Liberty Media acquired F1. She left Formula One in 2021 and started New Quebec Advisory and joined More Than Equal in 2022. Enjoy.
Thank you, thank you. Who's ready to geek out a little bit this morning, ladies and gents? Yes? I think it was W. Edward Deming who said, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." And this crew is definitely bringing the data, so buckle up. Maybe let's start with a little show of hands here. Who else in the room believes that when you look at the future of sports fandom, that future is female? Okay, that was a slightly leading question to a very generous audience, but I agree, and we have some stats to back that up. So just to set the scene, I think Formula One's last round of research showed that over 40% now of F1 fans are women, and 75% of new fans are women. So clearly, existing audience for F1, up and to the right as it relates to women fans. And then when you look at the next generation, some really fun stuff going on there as well. So even though they think that motorsports are more for boys, 75% or so of girls think that motorsports sound exciting, and 52% can now see themselves as F1 Academy drivers. And the parents as well are leaning in. So 4 out of 5 of them wish there were more women examples in the motorsports world. So all of the signs for current fans, for future fans are up and to the right. But let's get this started, Jessica, with you. Just who is this female motorsports fan, and how does that compare to women's sports fans overall? Would love to get the Nielsen perspective on that one.
Thank you, Leela. Good to see everybody. This is my first time here, so really appreciate the warm welcome. So I'm going to be talking a lot of data, so I built some slides to hopefully spice things up a little bit. Perfect. Okay. I know there's a lot of information on here, but I just want to call out a few things. First and foremost, within the U.S., there are 22.5 female motorsports fans. And the way we're defining motorsports fans in this example is a 4 or a 5 on a 5-point scale, 5-point interest scale. So think top 2 bucks. And so these are really your more core avid fans. if we look at women with any interest in motorsports, so let's say a 2 to a 5 on that same scale, it's 60 million. But for the purposes of this, we're going to stick with just kind of the core, more avid fans. To put that in perspective, there are 43 million female sports fans on that same 5-point interest scale. So about half of those are also motorsports fans. Okay, a couple things I want to call out. You'll see the index on here. This is the index to female sports fans. A couple things. 60%, I think if I'm doing my math right, of female motorsports fans are under the age of 40, which is a little bit younger than female sports fans overall. They're more likely to be Hispanic. They are a little less likely to have a college degree, and about 43% are married, which is actually a little bit higher than female sports fans overall. So, in a nutshell, the female motorsports fan is a very sizable audience, and also, as you can see here, from a demographic perspective, a very coveted, attractive audience to sponsors and advertisers.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute. But, I kicked off with some initial stats on F1 and the growth that we've seen there of women sports fans. What have you seen in terms of the growth of motorsports fans and women compared to men in the last 2-3 years?
So next slide, if you can. I don't know how that happened. Looks a little different. But anyway, hopefully you guys will get the point. So over the past 3 years, we have seen an increase in interest in motorsports. And this is across both males and females. The rate at which the female fan base is growing is a little bit higher than what we're seeing across males. And because of that, you'll see this year in particular, the makeup of the fan base has shifted quite a bit. So women are making up a larger percentage of these motorsports fans overall. So again, they're a sizable audience, a very coveted demographic, and they're growing. So a trend that I think a lot of sponsors want a piece of.
Yeah, I'm loving this so far. I mean, what's not to love?
Right.
But Kate, let's bring you into the conversation. So on the advisory board at More Than Equal, you guys run some fabulous research looking at lots of different aspects, particularly around the gender gap. And I believe part of your research has shown that women fans have some strong views in some areas. These are not neutral views. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you know about the fans' opinions.
Yeah, another one with a loud voice. It stood me well, by the way. So if you suffer from the same thing, don't worry. In 2023 we did the research in 2022, I think, but we did the largest piece of research that's ever been done into women in motorsport, we think. And this was part of More Than Equal, because we didn't want to try and spend somebody's money solving problems if we didn't know where those problems were. So we said, let's go and research this. And we did this research, and part of that was a fan survey. And I think this was the first time that the rise in the new female fan had really been quantified. And that's a few years ago now, and how things have changed since then, but along the same theme. What we found was everything that's been said so far. So we found that there was a growing fan base, that they were younger, that they were newer to the sport, and that they were driven by social media. But we also found that the female fan base have some pretty strong opinions on motorsport. They are passionate about motorsport. When young female fans get into a sport, they get into it big time. And they said to us, we will turn up more, we will buy more, we will follow it more, we will watch it more if there are more women competing in motorsport. They said that very, very clearly. They said they were dissatisfied. They were dissatisfied with the way that motorsport deals with equity and gender issues. We asked them to rank, I think, 21 sports on how they tackle equity, gender equity. Motorsport came 20th out of 21 sports.
What was 21?
I think it was American football. Sorry, guys.
Fair.
So they made their opinions very, very clear. They also called out the sponsors. So, women sports fans are not stupid. They could see that one of the things holding female talent back in motorsport is the lack of funding. And they can see that lack of funding is primarily driven by lack of sponsorship. So they, in our survey, and by the way, you don't need to take any pictures of the slides that we bring up, which I think there are some slides coming up, because this research is published in full on our website, which is morethanequal.com. You can download the full research report there, so don't worry about taking pictures. But yeah, they said they called out the sponsors. But they also, the corollary to that is something else we've touched upon, and we will be touching upon. They're calling out the sponsors, and they are saying that women aren't progressing in motorsport because they don't get the funding. They don't get the funding because you, the sponsors, are not funding them. They then went on to say, which we know, if you do support female drivers, we will support you, the sponsor. Of all the years, 30 years in Formula One, I've been doing surveys of fans. I have never seen propensity to switch brands so high. We had it at 56% of the fan base, female fan base, would actively switch brands to a brand who supported a female driver. And that is mirrored, I think, across a lot of sports now. So it's a feature of a female fan base. But it's interesting that it's so high and so strong in motorsport.
Yeah, that is interesting. At Parity, we have the privilege of working with over 1,200 athletes across 85 different sports, including motorsports. And to your point, we do see this tremendous propensity all the way through the funnel, really, in terms of the actions that fans will take when they see sponsors leaning in. So we'll get into that more in just a second. But, Kate, I talked about girls, that next generation of fan, and the way that they're leaning into motorsports. Where do you see opportunities for the sport to continue growing that next wave of female fans?
Well, our research was very, very clear on this. What fans are asking for from motorsport is more female competitors. That's what the fan base is asking for. And they said that if there are more female competitors in motor racing, they will follow it more, they will like it more, they will attend more races, they will watch more on television, and all those numbers are set out in our research. So the message really could not be clearer. The opportunity is clear. If you support female driver talent, you will be rewarded by the female fan base. It's as simple as that.
And I know I don't want to get too off tangent here. We could go much deeper on what it means to truly support and what that support needs to look like. But coming back to these fans and the behaviors that they exhibit. So, I mentioned we run a bunch of research, and so we've looked at sort of fans across all women's sports and sports fans in general. And what we found is even those who are sports fans but say they never watch women's sports, they have this really deep trust of women athletes. And I think this is why we see, whether it's female drivers or women from really any sport, the way that fans lean into them as influencers, as inspirational figures whom they really trust, believe in the products and services that they promote. That seems to be pretty widespread. And it goes all the way through the funnel, even to the point where we're asking them who they, have they purchased because of a brand's involvement? The answer is often yes. So Jess, I know you've got some more data from Nielsen on this, so shall we get into that?
Sure. Yeah, our data is definitely aligns with what Kate is talking about and what you're talking about. So I think everybody in this room probably understands that motorsports fans in general are more responsive to sponsorship than general sports fans. The same is very true for female motorsports fans. So you can kind of see down the line how they respond to sponsorship versus just general female sports fans. So why is this important? Because, like you said, Kate, female motorsports fans take action. So, and that's ultimately what sponsors want, right? You're not in it to, have fans that are just kind of passively observing a sponsorship. You want them to actually do something with that sponsorship. And if you go to the next slide, there's a few more stats on here. And this is actually, the top bar here is female motorsports fans, the middle bar is just female sports fans in general. The bottom bar is just female Gen Pop. Again, very same story here, that female racing fans are more engaged with sponsorship. And on top of all of that, women are making the majority of household purchase decisions. I know I'm the big spender in my family. My husband can attest to that. But I think this paints a really nice picture of why it's important to really market to female racing fans. They're a very invested audience with significant purchasing power. So if you're a sponsor, I don't know why you wouldn't want a piece of that.
100%. Let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about content and consumption trends, because it feels like, everything is changing so quickly in terms of how sports in general and motorsports specifically are consumed. So, Jess, maybe we'll start with you. What trends do you see in how women fans are consuming motorsports content?
Yeah, so some of the things that we are seeing, females are more likely to consume that non-live, behind-the-scenes content than we see across males. Obviously, there's quite a surge in docuseries right now, and we see viewership of those is a little more gender balanced than live races or the live sporting events of those respective docuseries, which I'll get into a little bit more in a little bit. So in addition to that, we're seeing more likely for women to consume on social media, more likely to follow athletes as opposed to teams, if you look at how they stack up against males. And this year in particular, when we look at motorsports, we're seeing women tune into more races that rate of increase of frequency of races is higher than their male counterparts. So certainly consuming differently than their male counterparts, and I think that definitely needs to be considered especially from a sponsorship perspective as well.
Yeah, I'll double down on something you said there around following the athletes. So we see this loud and clear in all of our research, and in our last round of research we asked fans of women's sports in general, what would you most like to see a brand do? Is it sponsor an athlete or partner with an athlete, sponsor a team, a league, a tournament, whatever it was? And the athlete was the number one answer across all demographic groups that we talked to. So this fascination with the athletes and this desire to know more about them is really coming through loud and clear. And I guess just sort of continuing this thread a little bit, and I say this as a proud Gen Xer, so I grew up watching hours of sport, maybe because there was not a lot else to do, to be honest, but I can't get my 3 teenage girls to watch an hour of anything, really. I mean, it's all these short clips, it's everything is streaming. Kate, what are you seeing when you look at the behavior of female motorsports fans?
I think there is, and this is across all sports, there are some worrying statistics coming out for the traditional thinker. And some of those worrying statistics are about the number of avid fans of a sport who don't actually watch the event itself on television or at all. They watch clips of it, they watch the background, shoulder content, they will watch TikTok, they will watch the lifestyle around it, as you said, the athletes. It's all about, and that's quite if you think about it, that's quite an existential trend if it continues. You put on a sport event, you drive your revenue from TV broadcast, and yet the fans are not fully engaged with that. What does that say for sponsorship as well, right? Who are paying all of that money for eyeballs. And I think what it tells us is we need to be ripping up the rule book, and the opportunity in women's sport is to rip up the rule book a little bit. So we touched on it in the earlier panel. Is it really all about reach? Is it really all about eyeballs? Or is the rise in women's consuming of sport, and especially in motorsport, is it telling us something else? Is it telling us that maybe that's not the way we should be measuring value anymore? And I think that is going to be a big opportunity in women's sport, is to demonstrate that there is a different way to construct, to activate, and to measure success in sponsorship is coming, and it'd be women's sport who do that.
Yeah, 100%. There's just different ways of engaging fans. I mean, different sport, but we talked to a VP of sponsorships recently and about the potential to come in and be the founding sponsor of an asset. And, part of the conversation was, well, they're in the midst of securing rights with a major streamer. And she wasn't interested in that at all. She wanted to understand, okay, what's the social footprint? Can we work with the athletes? How do we engage that younger fan? How are you going to use the content from the event to break through to these younger audiences? Jess, you mentioned the docuseries trend. So what did Drive to Survive do as it relates to women motorsports fans? I mean, what's the impact of all of that?
Yeah, and honestly, it's beyond Drive to Survive, too. There's Full Speed, there's 100 Days to Indy, there's just a ton of docuseries out there right now. So as I mentioned before, viewership of those docuseries are a little more gender balanced. And what we can do at Nielsen is we can actually isolate the viewers that are watching, let's say, for example, Drive to Survive, that did not watch a Formula One race that season or 6 months prior, or whatever time frame we choose. And then we can track if they are then watching a Formula One race after that. And what we find is there is significant viewer conversion across Full Speed. And I think for women who are watching, for women who watch those docuseries, they are watching more races for both Formula One and NASCAR than those that aren't.
So their entry into the sport was the docuseries, but now they're actually following
For
through.
a lot of them,
Yeah.
yes, yep.
I like it.
It's the ultimate gateway drug.
Suppose that's another way to put it. True. Kate, earlier you were just talking about what these female fans want to see, and it's participation, right? And we know that there are gaps. There are gaps in performance and participation on the women's side. So can you talk more about the opportunities or challenges inherent in that for sponsors?
This is the way I try to describe it, but to sponsors, to potential sponsors, to brands coming into women in motorsport. There are not many opportunities as a brand, as a potential sponsor, there are not many opportunities you will get in your entire career to change your sport forever. And that's what driving the progress of women in motorsport can do. The prize is huge. Finding the first female Formula One, and that's our mission, Formula One world champion. Just imagine what that's going to do. But take it on a step. What happens when there are 4, 6, 8, 10 female drivers lining up on the Formula One grid? As a brand, you have the opportunity, which you will not find in any other sport, to be able to make change happen on that scale. So that is the opportunity. The challenge is, of course, I'm not too jazz hands, optimistic on this. I am realistic. So the challenges are the challenges that we identified in our research study: participation and performance. Those are the two challenges that face women in motorsport. Participation. There are not enough women participating in motorsport. The pool is not big enough to find those unicorns. So we need, I'm going to take my glasses off because I can't.
It's getting serious.
It's getting serious now. Right. There are not enough girls competing in racing to draw from that pool to find those unicorns. And that's the first problem we have. Is that an opportunity? Hell yes. That's an opportunity for a brand. So I was talking to a brand about a motorsport sponsorship they were going to do. And we came up with an idea of switching out a whole load of the hospitality assets that they had, where they were going to take their existing clients to Formula One races and look after them and drive business. And we were going to do karting track days for their clients and invite their clients, whether they be their most important clients, male or female, to bring their kids with them, to bring their daughters with them on a track day with the sponsor. And this sparked off a really interesting line of thinking, because they said, we have a lot of clients who don't want to be away for the weekend from their families. We have a lot of fathers who are passionate about the opportunities for their daughters and who would leap at the chance, who would not accept an invitation to a Grand Prix, but would love the opportunity to take their daughters karting. This is just a small illustration of how this needs to be turned on its head and more creatively approached in terms of how you turn a problem into an opportunity. The second problem is participation is the first. The second is performance. So when women and young girls go into motorsport, they are not translating their participation into performance at the highest levels. That's where More Than Equal comes in. We've built a high performance program to help them translate their participation into high performance. But again, that creates an opportunity. There is opportunities for brands to come in and to completely rewrite by supporting, funding, looking after young female driving talent, helping it to solve that major problem that motorsport has, which is solving the performance gap that women suffer in motorsport because they don't get enough track time.
Yes, could not agree more with everything you just said. And I will add for sponsors, one dimension that I think sometimes sponsors don't think about is how your employees react when you do something game-changing for women athletes. I mean, we've seen this time and again with some of the brands that we work with who make their first venture, their first foray into supporting women's sports, because coming off decades of investing millions in men's sports, and the reaction from employees to those moves that you make, especially if they can be game-changing in the way I think they can be in
I can give you an example of that. So More Than Equal is a not-for-profit, and it's independent in the sport, and it's funded by two guys, David Coulthard, ex-Formula One driver, and Carol Komarek, who owns a company called Allwyn. Allwyn run a network of national lotteries around the world. Allwyn became a sponsor for More Than Equal. But for them, it's not about eyeballs at all. It's about their internal market. And that's because they make a lot of promises as a company about gender equity. They're working in an industry that's quite high-tech, so they have inherently, tech companies and financial services companies often have a problem recruiting and retaining female talent. And they write their policies and they try to address that. But they need to show it rather than tell it. And that's what they use their sponsorship of More Than Equal for. So they're not using it to get eyeballs. You're not going to get an awful lot of eyeballs on a bunch of 15-year-old karters that we're training. But you are going to get a deep level of engagement and validation to show their employees, to show women who want to join them, that they are a company that is taking very seriously that investment. And that's an area where brands supporting women in motorsport could really lean into.
Yeah, absolutely. You made the point earlier about how no big deal, but the entire sponsorship model is basically broken, folks. Sorry about that. And I do think that this sort of chasing of eyeballs is not the answer. And we see this at Parity with many of the projects that we work on, where the ROI surfaces in different ways, right? It's not about sheer impressions. It's about fans engaging, fans taking action, that sort of thing. Jess, I think it's clear at this point that that's the case, but what else can you add to the conversation around just the growth and the potential around women's sports fans?
I have a slide to speak to that.
I had a feeling you might say that.
Sorry, I'm just trying to make data as interesting as possible, so apologies.
Data is really interesting. We love data.
See, I agree. Most people don't agree, though. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and you ask about just women's sports overall, so to step back away from motorsports and look at some other female-dominated sports and what that growth looks like over the course of the past 3 years. This is that growth chart and interest, and this is among all adults. This is not just female fans, this is all adults, and we see this increase really across the board. I do think this trend should continue. I'm very excited for next year's World Cup, and I'm very anxious to see how, even though it's the men's sport, how that might impact fandom across the NWSL. Also think with some of the bigger names returning to the court next season, that we'll probably see some continued lifts for WNBA. And I really do think it's a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think we'll see a domino effect across that. But this is a great story. Again, the growth is there, the numbers are there. We certainly expect to see this trend continue.
And then what's the knock-on effect on the sponsorship values?
I have a slide for that too. So at Nielsen, one of the things that we do is we measure the media value that sponsors are getting in broadcast. So this is not commercial, your traditional commercial TV spots. This is the value of sponsors on jerseys, on the hood of a car, on home plate signage, whatever it might be, whistle to whistle. So it's branded integrations within the actual broadcast itself. And so far, in 2025, across these three sports that you see here, sponsors are getting about $640 million in value across those sports, which is a great number. It does pale in comparison to men's sports, but still a great number, a growing number, which you'll see here with WNBA increasing over 500% in 3 years. So great story. Yes, it is much more than just sponsor value. This is one measure. I think Michelle with NASCAR was talking about this on the last panel. It's return on objectives, right, and return on investment. And this means nothing, right? These values mean nothing if fans aren't changing their behaviors because of a sponsorship, if they're not more likely to purchase or consider or talk about the brand, all of those kind of standard KPIs. But this is, I think, a really important measure as we look at the growth in women's sports. And this increase is driven by quite a few things. One is just the number of sponsors that are involved are increasing. The number of broadcasts on national television, I think for the WNBA it was maybe 100 more this year, which is huge. And then viewership. So the higher the viewership, the higher these media rates will be. So that's kind of what we're seeing in the sponsor media value space right now.
Yeah, and I think something that's really fun about whether it's the women's motorsports opportunity or just the broader women's sports opportunity is, as much as we're seeing this growth, we're still quite early in this whole journey. And so the sponsors that are getting in on the earlier side are going to reap the dividends. Parity, you may or may not know, we're actually sister companies with with Gamebridge, who sponsored this panel and a lot of the summit. They have been really kind of leading from the front on this for a number of years now. 40% of their sports sponsorship dollars go toward women's sports. And by getting in early, they've obviously seen some of those investments really translate very nicely. So you're still early if you're thinking about it, but that may not be the case for much longer. Let's see, we've got a little bit of time left, but not a ton. Let's see, where will we go next? I guess I'm just curious to hear, we've talked about the fact that this women's fan base represents such a great opportunity. What kinds of fun activation are you seeing? What's caught your attention lately?
Good activations, I think I'd call out Elemis for a start. Elemis, the first face care, skin care brand in Formula One. And the reason that I'll give them a shout out is they became a sponsor of the Aston Martin team. And they're unashamedly high-end face care products for men, but primarily their audience is women. And they came into Formula One, and they have really thought about it. They have built up their awareness, of course, by being a sponsor of a Formula One team, so they've got their eyeballs, but that was only one very small part of what they wanted to do. They have put spas at the races. They had them in Vegas there for the fans. They have tried to engage with the female fan base where it is, which is turning up to the events. They've gone the other way. They've created thought leadership events for to discuss women in motorsport and how they can contribute towards changing things with that. They believe in community. They've latched onto the one thing that is one of the most important things about female fandom, and that's community, the sense of community that there is amongst female fans, and also the sense of community there is amongst women who work in motorsport. There is a whole community at play there, so they built like we are today. They built upon that, and they recognize it, and they see it, and they're leaning into that. But here's what's really interesting about it, and I don't know, clearly nobody's going to tell this outside this room. We're obviously not being filmed or anything.
Are we? I don't know.
Elemis are one of, if not the smallest paying sponsor of the Aston Martin team. And the latest numbers came out. They are getting the biggest share of voice. That's what getting behind female brands in Formula One or in motorsport can do for a brand. And I think that's why I call out that sponsorship activation.
Yeah, it's a fantastic example. Jess, what have you got?
That's a great one. I see so many, and unfortunately I wasn't able to experience this one in person, but Eli Lilly, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in their backyard, but I saw recently where they activated at, I believe it was the WNBA All-Star game here, as well as the Women's Final Four, and they were actually providing free mammograms to fans, and just as part of their 99 campaign where they're trying to raise breast cancer awareness. And I think they screened 61 women. One of them, they found a critical mass. So again, I know it's a very specific example, but something like that that's actually very likely saving lives and really showing women that they, care about their health and, providing these mammograms to, populations that maybe otherwise wouldn't have access to it.
Wow, it's hard to top that in terms of just the impact of something like that. But on a lighter note, I loved the e.l.f. Lip oil change with Catherine Legg was it last year? And then also the Lego was mentioned on the prior panel, the pink Cadillac in Vegas definitely caught my eye, and I think Lego's doing some fantastic things in this.
Well, I think that looking across, because I work in other sports as well, but looking across the whole female sport ecosystem now, it's beginning to break the rules a bit, and we're beginning to see collaborations that wouldn't happen in the male version of the sport. And you tie that in with trends like export stars investing in the sports, investing in the teams or the brands around those sports. It used to be that export stars just bought a tequila brand or invested in a tequila brand. Now, not so much. Now they're investing in a sports club or a sports series. So you're beginning to see this. And there's an agency, a marketing agency called Havas, who did a really, really interesting piece of work called Vision 2035. And they were taking all of these trends and they were imagining the future. And I'm imagining a really interesting activation for a brand. A brand comes in and it supports a female motor racing driver. And it co-invests with them on creating a new lifestyle brand, a fashion brand. And they co-invest together and they build that brand out and it sells out, 5 years down the line for $500 million. That's where I think this is going, and I think it's all about ripping up that traditional template model, and it's about brands being kind of brave enough to break the rules. It's low risk because it's low money right now, let's face it. Let's turn that problem into an opportunity, right? But let's do things differently. Let's think about it in a different way.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I think the ultimate insult for a brand sponsor these days is being accused of just doing a logo slap. It's sort of like, oh my gosh, think outside the box. And this is one of the most exciting things about women's sports in general, is the amount of creativity, the willingness to partner, to break new boundaries, to really think outside that box. And then stick with the consumer, because you're doing something different, doing something that will stand out and remain with you.
But I think one of the problems is the way that sponsorship is measured internally within big corporations or big brands is still skewed towards reach. It's still skewed towards the value of reach, the value of the brand slap, the value. And it's very difficult. It's very easy to say, don't do brand slap, but when the only way you can get money out of your your budget, your finance department, is by showing a metric that says, look how many people we reached. You're caught in that cycle, right? I think that the way that we need to move is towards creating different measurements, different ways of... So this isn't about sponsoring women in sport, women in motorsport. It's not about looking at it and saying the ROI is smaller. It's about saying the ROI is different. It's different ROI. And what we don't have quite yet are the established metrics for saying what different looks like and how to quantify that.
Yeah, we're up on time, but my closing question was going to be, what advice do you have for brands and sponsors looking to break into this space? But you've given a little bit of that. Anything else you would say there?
Be brave.
Be brave. Love it. How about you, Jess?
Agree with that. Yeah, be brave. I think personalizing sponsorships, especially for women, it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all. And again, going back to the behind the scenes, more personal. I think if you're aligning yourself with a driver or an athlete, just help your fan base, that fan base, get to know that driver or athlete better.
Yeah, and then whatever the data is for this new use case and new way of measuring, bring it. Always bring data, folks. I think we're up.
Right.
Thank you.